comes to me and says, "So I'm watching your video, Scott, and you're talking about how we bypass things in our spiritual practices, and I'm starting to recognize that a lot of my spiritual practices I was bypassing." And then comes the frustration, and even a little bit of beating with like, "What the hell have I been doing?" This is what I hear from people, and that's what they say that at about the same time when I'm taking them deep into the somatic experience, and they're seeing all the stuff that they still believe, the programs that are still there despite years of spiritual practice, hence the frustration. But if you could look at it from a different angle, which is be grateful that we now have some practices that can open you up on that level. Those practices that you did helped in some way, whether it was to stabilize more in awareness or be more in your body or learn how to watch thoughts, or you don't have to poo-poo on all that. But at a certain point, we do start to see that we have bypassed. And if you don't think I have, then you haven't been watching my videos. The reason I can talk about bypassing is because I've done it. I have done it. The anger repression, for example, that I've talked about. I had the same discovery. It was humbling. That's the word that I keep hearing people use around this, is like, it's humbling to finally be doing somatic based self inquiry that doesn't ignore trauma and that doesn't ignore early relationships with mom and dad, that includes all that. It's humbling because that's when you see all the stuff. And that's when I saw all the stuff for myself, going into the chronic pain and recognizing, damn, there's some anger there, right? That could be frustrating to have spent so many years practicing and then to discover something like that. But if you can see it as like a good thing, like, oh, yeah, I'm discovering things that I couldn't see before. I can go deeper now. You then don't have to beat yourself up on all the practices. I had a friend who said he had spent years in a devotional practice, doing a lot of breath work, other things like that. And then we started to do inquiry, and it's like a shitload of stuff was there and had never been reached by his previous practices. And he actually made the connection that many of those practices were kind of designed not to reach the deeper levels of suffering. And so that's where his frustration was. It's just like almost pissed off about it. It's like having your whole world, your spiritual world, come crashing down in a way. And it can look like, oh, everything I've done has been for naught. It can feel that way. All the bells and whistles, or beings of light, or blissful experiences, or cultivating calm abiding, all that, then to find out you hate your mother. Didn't know it, for example. Yeah. Maybe you were doing those practices in part to avoid that, not consciously. Maybe that's why we were drawn to certain things, is they didn't put us face to face with our suffering. Maybe we weren't ready for that. But if you spin your wheels long enough in a practice that doesn't seem to go anywhere with regard to this deeper stuff, that can be the thing that then creates readiness in you for this work. When you really see how you've been spinning your wheels and avoiding looking at that image of mom, or avoiding this, dealing deeply with this pain in your stomach or whatever it is. At about the time that people start doing this deeper work is this when they start giving up the folklore, the myths around enlightenment too. I see people come very focused on need to wake up, that future moment of waking up, as a way to just bypass. Totally innocent. But the focus on that experience and chasing that experience of awakening can easily blind you to, oh, the reason I'm on that path is because down deep inside I hate my mother or I'm not safe around people. To discover that and to realize that that's a big part of what's driving that search. So when you finally make contact with that, with this work, and you start dealing with the issue that you were running from, the enlightenment, future enlightenment thing just doesn't seem that interesting. Because in some ways, even though there is a waking up, there is waking up to awareness, it will not, it will not give you the privileged position of not dealing with your stuff. It will not do that. It will bring your stuff up, or you'll see it more from there, from the waking up, from the awareness. A lot of people have been doing tons of like therapy or modalities already, so they're done with it. Like, and so they come to the spiritual search and they hear something else. They're like, you're not a self. There is no self. So recognize that and be free of your suffering. And so when someone says, well, no, hold on, your suffering is the key to freedom. Going into that feeling that mom made you feel when she looked at you or when dad put his hand to you, going into that is the key to the freedom that you're looking for. When you really realize that, you stop searching for enlightenment in the future because you realize, oh, that was a way for me to avoid dealing with this. Follow me? This is why I talk about mature spirituality is not chasing carrots, or you're deconstructing that chase so that you can get to the real issue of why you're chasing the carrot to begin with, which is that something in your body mind structure is painful, emotionally or physically painful, don't want to be in your own skin, can't be here now. So the idea is I'm going to wake up so I can be here now and not suffer. Until you really realize the only way out is through. You realize that finally, and then you stop chasing the carrot. Strangely, once you stop chasing the carrot and you start dealing with your stuff, you start abiding. Most people start abiding more as that awareness because they're finally dealing with the drivers under the search, pulling that up, seeing it for what it is, letting it fall away, stabilizes one in awareness. So, ironically, it's like that gives them what they were looking for, that recognition. And at the same time, you're embodying that recognition because you're not avoiding that deep pain in the body or that contraction. You're not avoiding that anymore. A lot of the spiritual search, if you really pay attention, is that there's a contraction or something in the body that's very uncomfortable and it's like driving us. Do something, get somewhere, not here. And so there comes the idea that someday I'm going to do something that's going to be gone. There's the carrot. Just looking at how that shifts your focus, though. So, because the culprit is the contraction. That's the thing. If that contraction wasn't there, and there was just openness or translucence there, that wouldn't be driving you towards anything, right? Because it wouldn't be there. So unknowingly, this contraction, which remains unconscious, and we don't know how to deal with it, and there's nothing we feel like we can do with it. So it's like behind the search for something. It's propelling it. Find something, and then the focus then becomes on that. See, you're literally awareness is focused on future. Now, bringing back to be aware of what's presently here, the stomach that's driving that. Can you go into somatic based inquiry that goes deeper there instead of chasing that idea? And then in doing that, because that contraction is feel makes life unstable. Like you could be triggered out of it in one moment and then it settles down, seems peaceful, and then another trigger or porn or whatever, alcohol or whatever, oscillating from I got it So I lost it. That oscillation is often happening because the body's not being dealt with. A lot of these triggers are coming from this old energy stored in certain areas of the body that gets activated during a present trigger. So not only is the body responsible for the search, it's propelling us to search, which is to avoid what's happening now, to find something in the future, but it's also wreaking havoc in our lives, bringing up triggers. And yet these triggers, each one of them are doorways into deeper freedom, every single trigger, because you can connect it to the body sensation that you're running from. But instead of running from it, go into it. When the trigger happens, that's where the key is. And that's how abiding can happen more because you're dealing with your stuff. You're integrating rather than running from, being with what is skillfully rather than chasing something in the future. It's really beautiful to watch people come into this. And for some people, it's very painful too, because it's like the end of your spiritual world. Like you may have had plenty of rituals or material items or garb or concepts that you were really sinking your teeth into, spiritual principles, belief systems, all of that formed your spiritual life. And then to come to find out, much of it was simply just an avoidance strategy. Innocent, completely innocent. But to watch people come to that is amazing because they get real. I don't know how else to say it. It's like authentic. When they stop focusing on, I need to go sit on the meditation mat to get enlightened. And instead, they focus on, wow, my partner's really pissing me off right now. What is that? What am I believing? Right there. Using the trigger to awaken to your true nature rather than trying to wake to your true nature by chasing something that you're putting out in the future. It's beautiful to watch. And somewhere in that, a discussion of beginner's mind comes up often because after you've done all those practices for all those years, and then you realize that a lot of that was being done because something in the body was driving it all. And then with all that falling apart, all your practices, like it doesn't work anymore, and you recognize it's bypassing, but then to have beginner's mind. And that's what people often say. It's like, I don't know anything at this point because I see now that once I've really made contact with my suffering deeply, once I know now what has been driving my entire life, the deficiency stories, the trauma, emotional repression, whatever that is. Now that I know that, it's like I don't know anything else. I all the previous knowledge that I've built up or the practice that I was doing just doesn't make sense anymore. But in that moment, there can be beginner's mind, starting anew, as if you've never done any practice. So instead of, you know, building up your spiritual resume or feeling frustrated that your spiritual resume has been torn apart, use that beginner's mind, that not knowing what to do, to just start anew and look again with this work. Start almost like from scratch. What is it that I'm really running from here? Feel into the body and then do that deep somatic work that gets to it right there. I have to go to sessions, guys. Hope you got something out of this.